Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we shall continue with the explanation about four great elements in a Rupa Sarira. I think yesterday we discussed how Rupa Sariras are made with four great elements, and especially we talked about very new idea called Antarkalapiya four great elements, right? The four great elements that manifest themselves, or that of which effects can be seen within the units of kalapas, within the kalapas. And we have some evidences to prove that idea, especially when the effects of the Mahabhuta are felt, are seen beyond the borders of the kalapas. Yesterday we discussed about Apo and Vayu, how these Apo and Vayu can be understood as acting as forces acting between the kalapas. Today we shall talk about Patavi and Tejo. Patavi and Tejo. And then next week we go into the second approach of understanding the great elements from the point of view of Sarira. We get into like we understood the Kalapa, and then we took a Kalapa and understood about the existence of four great elements in it, and then in the same way we discuss how we come into Sarira, a body of Rupa, and then we try to understand how they can be found within that the four great elements can be found within that body. So today our focus is at Patavi and Tejo. So our topic would be four great elements in Rupa Sarira, right? So we already discussed about Apu and Vayu. Now we have to discuss about Patavi and Tejo. So this will be our focus today. We go into Patavi. So as for Vayu and Apu, we have two types of Patavi. Kalapiya Patavi, the Patavi that exists within a Kalapa, which gives the Kalapa the substantial nature. Due to that quality, another Kalapa cannot come into the space occupied by the first Kalapa. At the same time, a second Kalapa can be kept upon one Kalapa. The reason is it has a resistance for the other substance to enter into its territory. So this quality we discussed as Patavi, the hardness. Then we have the Antarkalapiya Patavi. Antarkalapiya Patavi is the hardness that exists between the Kalapas. So how do we prove this? How do we come into this conclusion idea? Now we know the Kalapas exist with space separating them. With space separating them. So this, if you take this as a body of Kalapa, body of Rupas, then we shall keep another body upon this. If this is a body of Rupas, we shall keep another body on it. So in that case, we know that in most of the cases there is a space between these two bodies. How can we prove it? Even the two solids are kept upon each other. If a liquid is put inside, it can still go through that. It can still go through this, right? It can still go through this. The liquid can, there is a possibility a liquid may enter into this space, and sometimes even between some particles. So it shows that even though the two solids are kept upon each other, one solid is kept upon another, both of them in contact, there is still some space between the kalapas of the two bodies. Then the question comes, why doesn't this kalapa move into this space? Why doesn't this kalapa go into this space? So why it can't just get packed, fully packed with each other? The reason is there is a certain kind of a resistance in each, like a kalapa doesn't allow another kalapa to enter its territory. The same way a material body doesn't allow another solid material body, two solids doesn't allow them each other to penetrate each other. It is prevented. So what is this quality? It is the patavi that prevents this quality. The quality which prevents the entrance of another substance into its territory is patavi. This can be seen in the kalapas, and this can be seen in the material bodies as well. So in a kalapa, it's obvious that it is the quality, the hardness that makes up the kalapa. Then what is this quality that can be found within a material body? Is it the hardness that is found within a kalapa itself? We come into the idea that because even though they are kept upon each other, we know that they have a certain space between them. So it shows that there is sort of a interunitary hardness working here. Interunitary hardness is working here. We may also draw it like when two kalapas are there, this hardness, the spectrum of hardness goes beyond the range of kalapa. So it doesn't let another kalapa to enter into it. Someone can say call it the vayu. Someone may argue that it is vayu which is pulling this, which is pushing this away. Right? Someone can say it's, what was the color we used for vayu? I forgot actually. Yellow, right? It was white, the patavi was white actually. What we used. Yeah, this is patavi. Someone can say this is pushed away by the vayu, effect of vayu of the other kalapa. But anyway, it shows that it doesn't allow another substance to enter into it. So I called it the patavi. Whatever it is, there is a certain quality which prevents something from entering into it. So this is what I term as antarkalapiya patavi. This is what I call as antarkalapiya patavi. So that is the main reason, the main quality which is responsible for preventing one substance entering into its other space. Right? So then how does this, what are the proofs for this? So we come into now, when the hardness is explained. So what I want to say here is, when hardness is explained, the qualities of manifestations of hardness is explained, sometimes the teachers have used how their manifestation based on the unitary quality, that how the kalapas exist as a one unit. Now for example, according to the quotation that I have given, the Mahathera says there are kalapas with hardness. At the same time, in some bodies, we may see kalapas with abundant vayu and also some space between them. In such a case, in that specific material body, when there is a lot of vayu, when there is a lot of space element in it, we feel this hardness. How this hardness is felt as a softness. It's felt as a softness. In Pali we can call it antarkalapiya. Mostly A is insert, thank you for that. Antara. So in this, in such a scenario, the hardness of the body, the patavi of that entire body is felt as softness. It's not because of a quality of the patavi itself, because of the effects of the other kalapas as well. So it acts as a unit. So what I want to explain is this manifestation of 4 great elements are doesn't depend only upon themselves. If the kalapas are packed close to each other with a high density, and there are less kalapas with vayu and less space, this kind of body is felt as rough. In this body you can feel the softness, it's felt as soft. So it shows that why hardness was felt as a softness is because of it is collectively felt. The effects of vayu and effects of akasa is found there. So it doesn't prove the interkalapa patavi. It is not an evidence for that, but to show that in order to understand the great bhutas in a physical body, we have to take it as a one unit. Now softness is a pure quality of hardness, of patavi. It's not a mixture of two qualities. Softness itself is patavi. Why softness is felt, patavi is felt as a softness? Because of the space in between them, and also because of the air element, the abundance of air element in other kalapas of the same material body. So likewise, so when we explain about the 4 great elements, we have to take it as a one unit. That's the idea that I want to explain with this quotation. It's not a proof for the Antarkalapya Patavi. Antarkalapya Tejo, we can get a clear proof from the teachings of the Buddha itself, but not with that word, but how it has been explained. So I shall read that quotation taken from Rerukane Mahathera's book. Patavi is felt as roughness when kalapas are packed close to each other. When kalapas are not densely located close to each other, when there are kalapas with abundant vayu, and when the space between kalapas is more, hardness is felt as a softness. While patavi is felt, hardness is felt as softness. While patavi is felt as roughness in a stone, in the body of an infant, it is felt as softness. Therefore, both roughness and softness are patavi. In a metal and a rock, where kalapas are densely packed, patavi is felt as weight as well. In wool, where more vayu and space are found, it is felt as lightness. Therefore, heaviness and lightness should also be known as patavi. Right? So when we study the 4 great elements in a physical body, we have to take the approach of a collective understanding. We have to take it as a unit. We better not to explain the kalapas or the realities separately, as separate kalapas. Then, so this patavi, the inter-unitary patavi, which prevents the entering of another body into the space a certain body is occupying, can easily be felt, can easily be known with our wisdom. So I term it as a patavi. So then there was a very nice question was raised yesterday. If patavi can be found within that space, within that area, what is the space element? So it's a very nice question, but how would I tackle that question, answer that question is, when you take the separate kalapas, surely there is a space between them. There is a space between them, that which we call the space. But at the same time, in that space, there is a certain kind of a hardness, certain kind of a resistance, which prevents the entering of another substance into it. So in that area, certainly there is a certain resistance. What is this resistance? If that resistance can be felt with wisdom, it should be known as ultimate reality. or at least the effect of an ultimate reality. Either we can say Patavi of the Kalapas are effecting beyond its limitations, or we can say a new Patavi is made in that area, whatever it is. But the reason is, now for instance, if you think about two Kalapas with Tejo, one Kalapa with lesser Tejo and the other Kalapa with higher Tejo, when they come to close together, the Tejo affects each other. Tejo of the Kalapas affect each other. Then this effect can be seen through the space. So someone can still ask the question, if Tejo is affecting another Kalapa, where is the space? Is the space getting absent, or is the space is not existing? So we can also mention this Tejo existed during this space, and also we can say in another way, Tejo of one Kalapa affects the other Kalapa. So these inter-unitary Mahabhutas, even though I term them as four great elements, one can easily mention that the four great elements are found within a Kalapa, and their effects can be seen beyond the borders. It's just a way of expression. So that effect, one can name it as the Mahabhuta if he likes, if he or she likes. Or you can just say the Mahabhutas are confined to a Kalapa, but their effects can be felt beyond the limits of Kalapas. So this effect is what I'm calling the Antarkalapiya Mahabhuta. Antarkalapiya Mahabhuta. So according to my understanding, Patthana explains about the Kalapas about the Mahabhutas that are found within a Kalapa only, not about this quality which can be found outside. So it's a very tricky thing, but the thing is, we have to always go into, and another very good question was asked yesterday, what is the criteria to decide why the Antarkalapiya Patavi or the four great elements are not non-existing? Why are they just absent? Why are they are not just absent? What is the criteria for me to term them as four great Bhutas? The criteria is, if something can be felt with wisdom, if something can be verified with wisdom, if something can be known with wisdom, and if it is not reducible to its components, not into its causes, into its components, into its ingredients, then it has to be termed as ultimate reality. So this resistance is something that can be felt with wisdom. Scientifically, it's a different explanation, but according to Theravada tradition, what is the criteria for a reality? If something is liable to parinya, if something is liable to pahana, we gave four criteria to understand the reality. I think we discussed this in the first few lectures of our course, the previous course. If something is liable to parinya, parinya means can be known with its intrinsic nature or known with the qualities known as anicca, dukkha and anatta, impermanent, suffering or non-self. If something can be eradicated by bringing up opposite qualities like the defilements, can be eradicated. If something can be developed like the good qualities like bhavana, sila, samadhi and panya, and something can be attained like nirvana. If something fits to any of these four functions, that thing has to be called a reality. That thing has to be called a reality. So especially the first function, the abhinya. Abhinya means can be known in its intrinsic nature, can be known as impermanent, suffering and non-self. So yesterday we talked about the flowing nature. Flowing nature, scientifically, there is no something called a liquidity. Liquidity is something due to the bonds, the ionic or covalent bonds, especially the covalent bonds or ionic bonds, and the polar bonds. Due to this, we have something called a liquid. We have something called liquid. But that liquidity, according to the Buddhist perspective, liquidity is something that can be felt with wisdom, that can be known with wisdom. You cannot reduce it into its component, you can reduce it to its causes. That's a different thing. So in that same manner, this Kalapiya Mahabhuta, or the effects of Mahabhuta beyond their borders, whatever it is, whatever approach we take, whatever the wordings you use, these qualities can be felt. So that is the main reason for for us to term them as ultimate realities. So that is the explanation of Antarkalapiya Mahabhuta. Sadhyaru karange. Antarkalapiya Mahabhuta. Then we come into Tejo. You have Kalapiya Tejo. Then we have Antarkalapiya Tejo. Kalapiya Tejo is the quality that is found within a Kalapa. If you remember, there is hardness. At the same time, there is certain kind of heat or coldness which exists in there. These two qualities are now Vayu and Apo. Their function is more prominent. Patavi and Tejo, their quality is prominent. Vayu and Apo is felt as a certain function. Holding, bloating. Tejo is felt as heat or coldness. Patavi is felt as hardness. So if you think about it, it's another point, another aspect that we need to keep it in our mind. Now hardness, in an abstract noun, the heat is a noun, but it's a quality that can be felt. But the cohesion is an action noun. Then bloating nature. Bloating is also an action. So the functions, now when we think about Apo and Vayu, functions are more prominent, while Patavi and Tejo, the quality is more prominent. So that's why when we draw it, we just draw Patavi and Apo as just qualities, but when we want to draw the Vayu and Apo, we draw it with arrows. It shows that its function is more prominent in that regard. So normally the reality itself is the characteristic. So we are unable to distinguish what is Apo and what is Vayu as qualities. They are just mere forces, we can call. That's why I just gave the term as forces. May not be fully fitting according to the scientific explanation. So then this Tejo that can be found within a Kalapa, strengthens the remaining qualities, especially the Vayu and Apo, according to the tradition, performs properly based on this function of Tejo. It can also be known with a star, in a star, how the equilibrium of a star is specifically greatly related to the pressure created due to heat, right? Due to the heat. So when the heat increases and decreases, the level of the star, the size of the star increases and decreases. So likewise, the heat is responsible for functioning of Apo and Vayu. And also it is responsible to strengthen the Patavi, to get that substantial quality, more prominent substantial quality. And also according to the Theravada tradition, due to this Tejo, owing to this Tejo, a new Kalapa suddenly pops up. It's not coming from this Kalapa. Due to this Kalapa, another Kalapa appears. These site of Kalapas we call Utuja Rupa. It's another very nice philosophical discussion on this. I think I discussed on this once, just slightly. The Madhyamika's argument was, if this reality happened, if this reality, the B, either B should come from A, or either B has to arise by itself. These are the two arguments that they bring. According to Theravadians, B is supported by A. Right? But still, according to even the Theravadians say it arises having not been before. So the Madhyamika's argument is, this support is just a support. Right? It's Hetu, not the Kattu. Kattu the subject of this action has to be B. Right? Even grammatically, it has to be B. So he is the subject of this action, the B itself. If B didn't exist before its arising, how could B appear doing its same action? So that was the argument. It's a very, very, very strong argument. So they denied the existence of a new reality. So they explained that realities are absence, or realities do not exist in their intrinsic nature, right? In their intrinsic nature. That was the sunyata, sabhava sunyata. Then that was the explaining sabhava lakkana sunyata. Sabhava sunyata was, they explained the Paticcasamuppada and said that there is no self here. So they had two types of sunyata. Sabhava sunyata is, they explained that there is no human being or no specific person other than the functioning of reality. The Paticcasamuppada was explained to abolish the idea of a self. Then they also mentioned, in the deepest level, even the Paticcasamuppada factors do not exist. Right? Because if sankhara appears due to avijja, if sankhara is not coming out of avijja, if sankhara is happening by itself with the help of avijja, sankhara has to arise by itself. So they negated the fact that there cannot be such an action. The kattu cannot arise by itself. So sankhara cannot arise, cannot happen, cannot exist. So then they brought the sabhava lakkana sunyata. So all the realities are, there is no such a reality because paramattha dhammas according to them. Right? So but according to them, nibbana exists as far as I know. So this is another quite interesting topic. Anyway, that's not related to us at the moment. Utuja. So these rupas created by Tejo of another kalapa are called Utuja rupas. So Tejo has few functions. It supports the remaining elements, it strengthens the remaining elements, and also it causes new rupas to appear. That is the functioning of Tejo within a kalapa. Then we come into Antarakalapiya Tejo. Antarakalapiya Tejo. The kala Tejo that exists within the kalapas. Within the kalapas. Now we go into the definition given by the Buddha about the rupa. He mentioned what is rupa. Ruppati ko bhikkave tasma rupante uchati. Because rupa is called, something is called a rupa because it changes. Due to what? Sitena pi ruppati, unhena pi ruppati. Dansa makasa vata tapasirin sapasampassena pi ruppati. Jigajjaya pi ruppati, pipasaya pi ruppati. The change, the rupa, this thing changes due to heat, due to coldness, due to hunger, due to thirst, due to the biting of gadflies and so forth. Now we think about the heat, how heat is affecting. Now according to the Theravada tradition, rupa bodies, the similes were given according to the commentaries. A lady was traveling in the desert with her child, and there was no food and there was no water with her. In the desert, the sunshine was very strong. So in the end, she had to cover her child and she couldn't walk any further because the sand was too hot. In the end, she kept her child below herself to protect her. In the end, she died together with the child due to the heat. So the entire body started, the functioning of the body disrupted. It's completely got not functioning properly, so it couldn't sustain anymore. So what happened according to that? Kalapas with abundant tejo. Kalapas with abundant tejo was striking at her body. Another very important fundamental of the Theravada tradition is when fire is brought closer to a substance, the substance burns, starts to burn. So what is the tejo which causes this burning, which is burning at the moment? What is the, why this substance got burnt? Is it purely because of the heat or the fire which was brought close to it, or is it because of a tejo inside? According to Sabhidhamma scholars like Chandavivana Mahatera explains that when a fire is brought closer to a substance, that fire is responsible for the increasement of tejo within the substance. The burning happened with that tejo, which was increased within the substance itself, not by the tejo which was brought close to it. It is a cause. The burning happens within the object itself. The heat increases, the amount of tejo increases in the substance, and it starts to burn up. So what happens is, according to that explanation, when Rupa Kalapas with tejo struck at these Kalapas, or either they may physically strike or they may have come closer, whatever it is. The amount of tejo in these Kalapas increases. Amount of tejo in these Kalapas collectively, like it increases as a body. So what is the effect? If Kalapas have their own limitations, it is clear that the effect of tejo can be seen between the Kalapas, right? Either we call it antarkalapiya tejo or just the effect of the tejo, kalapiya tejo, it doesn't matter, whatever we use. Somehow the effect is seen, right? Otherwise, there is no way, if our four Mahabhutas are only confined to the Kalapas, how could it affect another Kalapa? How could the tejo of a certain Kalapa affect another Kalapa if the tejo is only confined to the Kalapa itself? So it shows that this is what I am talking as antarkalapiya tejo. Antarkalapiya tejo. And this is very clearly explained, clearly understood, can be clearly understood by the definition the Buddha has given to the Rupa. Due to heat, due to coldness, the material bodies start to change. What kind of a change is this? This is another question for this. What kind of a change is this? So according to how I understand this, there is a interkalapiya bondage between the Kalapas. That is why they cannot be separated very easily. So this tejo affects this apo. If tejo affects this apo, so what happens? The antarkalapiya patavi, the hardness which existed or which was found between these Kalapas, the space, reduces. And even the bondage between the Kalapas reduces, the apo reduces, but another apo arises, increases. What is that? The apo of liquidity. This increases. And the ice starts to melt. The interkalapiya bondage has to be reduced. So as a result, the hardness which is felt as a surface reduces. Instead of that, the flowing nature starts to appear. So the liquidity increases and the antarkalapiya patavi reduces. Why is that? It is because of tejo which affected the material body. Then someone can ask, isn't it that the apo in that materials, in that kalapa is reducing? Apo in that kalapa is increasing. Apo is the bonding force. Now if you try to explain the liquidity based on the kalapas, only based on the kalapas. Now thing is, if the kalapa with patavi changes into a kalapa with abundant patavi, changes into a kalapa with abundant vayu, abundant apo, what happens is, we know that a liquid doesn't have a specific shape. So if the kalapas, then what happens, this kalapa itself, if its apo increases, the kalapa also should change its shape. For example, it has to be something like that, because apo is dripping. So instead of saying, if we say the apo increases in a material body, when the heat is given, the solid quality, solidness reduces. And if we try to explain only based on the kalapa itself, think about a kalapa with more apo. Either it has to shrink, it becomes more dense, because apo is sometimes explained as a force inside which holds the other great elements. If apo increases, it will shrink more and more. We call it, there's a nice word for that, deploying, if I remember. Yeah. Implode is the word. Implode. Imploding is something collapsing inside. A star would implode, right? So if apo is increasing, according to this explanation, either the kalapa has to implode, it completely shrinks. But if we try to explain the liquidity, because we know that liquidity doesn't have a shape, then the kalapas also should lose their shape. So what is this liquidity? It is very obvious. It is something can be felt due to how the interaction of kalapas, how the kalapas are interacting with each other. So therefore, instead of saying the kalapa changes its shape, what I personally understand is the kalapas, the interaction between the kalapas changes when heat is given. For that, the interaction between the attraction between the kalapas reduces, but at the same time, as a material body, the fluidity increases. So when we say the antarakalapi apo increases, we are talking about the fluidity, the liquid nature, not about the bondage between the kalapas. And when liquid is solidized, or when it gets freezing happens, the antarakalapi apo, the liquidity, reduces, and the antarakalapi patavi increases. And also at the same time, the bondage increases. Then when substance is, liquid is vaporized, water becomes air, like the vapor. At that time, the antarakalapi vayu, the traveling nature, collectively, the substance starts to move as the entire body gets a vayu quality attribute of air, and that liquidity reduces. The same way, condensation. Condensation means air becoming a liquid. So in the reverse order, due to the cold tejo, when the cold tejo is given, what happens? The air element reduces and the water element, the liquidity, increases. And also we have another thing called solid suddenly changing into vapor, not into liquid. Skipping the liquid phase, the state. We call it sublimation. That can be felt in carbon atoms. Carbon, the element of carbon. When you heat the carbon, pure carbon, POO, whatever, maybe a substance or something. I don't think it's a compound, the pure carbon, as far as I remember. When you heat the pure carbon, it suddenly gets vaporized instead of becoming a liquid. Carbon suddenly from solid to gas. There is no interspace called solid, liquid, gas. Carbon comes from solid to gas. That is called sublimation. So in that case, the antarakalapi patavi reduces rapidly, and suddenly the vayu increases. And bringing carbon back from gas to solid, we call deposition. In that case, the vayu of that body reduces and the patavi increases. So that is another way that this antarakalapiya, tejo, affects the remaining antarakalapiya great elements, the interunitary great elements. Then another explanation is utuppachaya. Utuppachaya means when in a material body is always in a certain environment. then in that surrounding environment there are Rupa Kalapas with Tejo. Rupa Kalapas with Tejo. Right? So these Rupa Kalapas, these Tejo, do affect the material body. The material bodies thus affected by Tejo of the surrounding environment are called Utuppachaya, according to the commentaries. Utuppachaya. The rupas that are affected by the surrounding Tejo. If this Tejo is conducive, the substance would last long, and if it is adversing, then it would get destructed soonly. And also another example for this Antarkalapiya Tejo is the Jirapana Tejo. Jirapana Tejo. This is the human body, right? In this body there are a lot of Kalapas. And also there is a material quality called Jirapana Tejo, which has more Tejo. These Kalapas exist in the entire body. According to the tradition, it says that these Kalapas at the young age, after birth, at a certain level, if this is the time, if this is our years, lifespan, at a certain age, the strength of the Kalapa increases, and then it starts to decrease. What is the reason? Who is responsible for this? This is done due to Jirapana Tejo. Jirapana Tejo. Jirapana Tejo is constituted with that element, that specific element is constituted with 4 types of Kalapas: Kammaja, Chittaja, Utuja and Aharaja. They are a subtle matter. They are not the hard stuff in our body, but they are spread all over the body. So what happens? The body gets strengthened and decays due to this Tejo. Who gets strengthened? Is the Kalapa itself is strengthening, or, for example, if the Kalapa itself is strengthening, or other Kalapas? According to the explanations, the remaining Kalapa, the other Kalapas, affected by this Tejo, affected by Jirapana Tejo, the strength of these Kalapas increases and decreases with time. So when we say decaying or strengthening or decaying happens in the remaining Kalapas of the body, the hard stuff. Jirapana Tejo is the cause for that. What is the Jirapana? It's a subtle matter with abundant Tejo produced by all the 4 causes. It can be found everywhere in our body. Therefore, this Tejo is affecting other Rupa Kalapas. So if it affects, it means its force or its ability or its capacity can be seen beyond the ranges of Kalapa. This is why we discuss about an Antarkalapiya Tejo. It's not the Jirapana Tejo is decaying in generations. It's the remaining Kalapas in the body which decays and finally would die one day, which gets stronger during our young ages. So therefore, it's also a very good solid evidence to show that the Tejo affects beyond the borders of the Kalapa. So we have discussed about the 4 types of realities, great elements within a Sarira. Right? I think we shall draw it now together, all together. So if this is a Rupa Kalapa, these are Rupa Kalapas. In a zoomed scale, Sometimes it says the Rupa Kalapas are touching each other, possible. In some cases, they are separated. Now we take it there this as a one single unit. This is Rupa Sarira. Within this Sarira, each Kalapa contains Tejo. Each Kalapa contains Tejo. At the same time, each Kalapa has Vayu within it, which pushes it outwards. Yeah, I shall draw a few only. Takes time otherwise. Okay, just only 2 lines. Right, then each Kalapa has Apo, which confines into a certain limited range. Then what happens, according to this explanation, these Kalapas are bound to each other with a certain bondage. We call it Antarkalapi Apo. Right, Antarkalapi Apo. Then also, this entire body contains a substantial quality which prevents other material stuff entering into its territory. Better to draw with white color actually. Anyway, now it's too late. Then it also has this Tejo is affecting. Tejo of a certain Kalapa affects the other Kalapas as well. Antarkalapiya Tejo is well. Right? If you want to say Antarkalapiya Vayu, when this body, now one way of explaining is this body, this material thing pushes away the other, while this pushes away the remaining. It's another way of explaining the Vayu, effect of Vayu. So it is felt, it can be felt when we touch something from outside. Sometimes the pushing nature can be felt, especially in a balloon or in a pillow filled with cotton, right? So likewise, it's better to draw this with white color actually. This is Antarkalapiya Patavi. Sorry for that. Right. So this is how a material body is existing. We can find the forces within a Rupa Kalapa, at the same time the forces that can be felt in between the Kalapas in a single unit, as a single unit. Right? So now it's obvious that all these qualities that we pointed out can be felt with wisdom. So if something can be felt and if it is irreducible, that is the criteria for something to be called a reality. So I take the bold position to call them realities and name them as Antarakalapiya Mahabhuta. Either you can say the effects of Mahabhuta within a Kalapa are felt beyond the borders of the Kalapa, or we can say the Kalapas exist even beyond the Mahabhutas exist even in between these Kalapas. So whatever it is, the point I want to emphasize, this is a material body, Rupa Sarira. This Rupa Sarira, when we discuss about this Sarira, in most of the places, what we feel, it can be more, in most of the cases, what we feel either is these forces that I explain as interunitary. But still, the forces of Kalapa, the qualities of Kalapa can also be felt. I don't deny that fact. But thing is, whether you what quality you feel doesn't matter in the end, as long as it's just a mere quality. As long as it's just a mere quality, it should be known as non-self. So whether the Mahabhutas are confined only to a Kalapa or their effects can be seen beyond the Kalapas, in both the cases, it doesn't affect your meditation. It doesn't affect your meditation. Because when we feel that our Kalapas are stuck together in this shape and it doesn't get scattered in the air, that is due to Apo. That's the bonding nature. It's just a bonding nature. This Kalapa is spread over a certain space. That is because of Vayu. The Kalapa can be heated by a heat coming from outside or generated from inside. So this is just heat affecting the other Kalapas. And the substantial quality, the hardness doesn't allow, or substantial or the resisting quality doesn't allow another substance to go through this. We can keep something upon our hand. This is a function of Patavi. That's how normally we explain in the book. It doesn't go into detail like this. But when we thoroughly examine, we can see two types of four great elements. The books just generally explains the Patavi is the quality, the Patittana Rasa. Either it acts as a surface for the remaining Mahabhutas to act upon, or at the same time, different Kalapas can be kept upon this. This is due to Patavi. No one would deny that this is Patavi. Anyone who studies Buddhism. So what is this Patavi? Is it the Patavi that is found within the Kalapa, or is it the Patavi that is found within Interkalapiya? Because even here, we normally say there is a space between the two. There is space between the two Kalapas. So then it shows that the existence of these two great elements are obvious, and there is no fault in calling them Mahabhuta. And in your meditation, whether you focus on the Antarkalapiya or Kalapiya, as long as you understand them as a mere quality, that is good enough for meditation. That is good enough for meditation. So this, even you accept this idea, or just if you feel that this is not very logical, even you just rejects it, it doesn't going to affect this meditation practice, because what you feel in practical level, you have to understand the Mahabhutas in a practical level. So to my understanding, the practicality is mostly found in the Antarkalapiya level, right? You normally feel that. So therefore, this gives us the idea and also elaborates our object of meditation about the Rupa. In the end, what we should understand is, this Rupa is not a self, it's not a one person, it's a combination of the four great elements, either within Kalapa or interunitary Kalapas. Yeah, so that would be our lecture. I would open the forum to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. So hello everyone. As usual, if you have a question, you can raise your hand or you can put your question in the chat box. Yeah, so Bhante, I don't know if this is a question or a but so can we think of it this way, Bhante? So can we think that the Kalapiya Mahabhuta are constant, they don't change, because they are like the intrinsic natures of a certain kalapa. But the thing that we feel, like you said, that the Antarakalappiya Mahabhuta, so which means the thing we feel, we see as the different states of material are in fact responsible by the Antarakalappiya Rupa.
That's what I personally feel. But this doesn't mean that the kalapas are not permanent. They rise and fall. But the composition of the kalapas change in a very limited range. They would change in a very limited range. The composition of a kalapa itself. Composition of a kalapa itself.
What I mean is that, like the how we say, the proportion of the four Mahabhutas in a certain kalapa
would be
should be the same.
Very similar. They may change, but in a very limited range.
Right.
Not drastically. Yeah.
Right. So scientifically, when we say that, we say that energy doesn't just pop up, right? Just pops up, but it just changes from this form to another. So does that mean that, for example, like you said, for the tejo element, when we put heat close to a body, then we feel the transfer of the energy from this body to the other. So that part is basically irresponsible by the Antarakalapa, Kalappiya Rupa then.
Yeah, the thing is, I would say, like in such a transformation, what happens is the Rupa Kalapas would, because according to the tradition, if we come from the Buddhist perspective, even the Kalapa arises and passes away. Even the Kalapa arises and passes away. And also it has a certain kind of a temperature within that physical body as well. So when they arise and pass away, and the other body is affected by this tejo as a one unit, which exists as a one unit, this amount has to reduce. It's also obvious when we bring a cool object to a hotter object, the cooler object the temperature increases while the hotter object's temperature decreases a bit. So it shows that there is some kind of a transformation of energy. So what I would say, the entire the system, the energy of the system would reduce, and the energy of the other system would increase, and that would also could be affected by the Kalappiya Tejo. Slight change of the Kalappiya Tejo within a Kalapa, like when they arise and pass away, the new Rupas, the Tejo of the new Rupas would reduce, would be lesser, and the Tejo of the other Rupas, other Kalapas, other bodies Kalapas would increase in their generation wise. Like before the contact, the Tejo was in a higher level of this Kalapa, and after the contact, when they arise, the level of Tejo has reduced to some degree. But collectively speak, to a certain degree, not fully, because each and every Kalapa should have a certain kind of a Tejo. But collectively speaking, the effects of the Antarkalappiya, then if we in this body, the Antarkalappiya Tejo, if we measure the Antarkalappiya Tejo, that has greatly reduced, while the Antarkalappiya Tejo of the other body has increased. That is the effect made by the A to B. That's how I understand. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for this. Sadhu. Please go ahead, Sayadaw Punya.
Okay, good morning, Pandit.
Good morning, Sally.
So when you talk about the Jira Tejo, Jirapana Tejo.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we're in the young age, so we feel our body always hot. But when we come to the old age, even like after 50 years old, so even I observe many people, they easily feel cold. Is it because of the Jirapana Tejo is weak or something?
Maybe I'm no experience because still I'm 30s. Maybe we'll feel it when it comes to 50s. Maybe that Jirapana Tejo is reducing, I think. Maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe as what we discussed with Dr. Ann, it affects the other Kalapas, and maybe what we are measuring as the heat is Jirapana Tejo. If we are measuring what is at Jirapana Tejo, then the amount of Tejo had reduced maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because-
I'm not sure what is the temperature that we feel. What is the temperature that we feel? Normally, we call this kammaja tejo that can be felt in our body, and also a part of it is jirapana tejo. A part of it is jirapana tejo. So if the temperature of the old people are reducing, it reduces, maybe the tejo has affected the environment, or maybe maybe it has absorbed by the kalapas and it had different effects. Yes, I'm not sure about that.
I see. Okay, thank you.
No, it's a very good question to analyze, but I'm not sure now. The question that why cannot I stand upon that question properly is, now we don't know which temperature is felt. Now, if we at the younger ages, are we feeling only jirapana tejo, or at all the age? So what they feel, is it jirapana tejo or some effect of some other tejo, or is jirapana tejo still present and decay in the rupa kalapas or effect in the rupa kalapas while the temperature felt by us? If it is a different type of a tejo, then our explanation would be completely different. So I cannot give an exact answer for that, because I cannot see. We have to find what is the tejo that is felt first. Then we can discuss on this matter. But it's a very good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bhante.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. And the next question is, Bhante, could Bhante please explain again the difference between ultimate reality and reality?
Huh?
So the difference between reality and ultimate reality.
Did I explain such a difference?
I'm not sure, but that is the question. So
Is
explain the difference.
maybe the sabhava and sabhavena sunyang and sabhava lakkhana? Is it that?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go into that then. Okay, because ultimate reality and reality are same according to how I speak. I never had two different ideas about reality and ultimate reality. Maybe in some cases I was talking reality, and in some cases I was talking ultimate reality. Please keep in mind, they are identical. They are identical. When I say reality and ultimate reality, they are the same. So the thing was, we assume that the question was about the sabhava sunyang, sabhavena sunyang, sabhava lakkanena. Maybe this can be slightly different. The name may be slightly different. Anyway, according to Madhyamika, Sabhavena Sunya means, now Buddha has explained, Avijja causes Sankhara. Sankhara causes Vijnana. Vijnana causes Nama Rupa. This is a process. So normally, what we understand is this process as a living being. This is our understanding. A living being, satta, a being, living being. So Buddha, what he did in the Paticcasamuppada was he abandoned this idea. He said there's no living being. What exists are the realities. Realities supporting other realities. Right? So the generation continues. There is no self here. And there is no, for example, bhavapacchaya jati, jatipacchaya jara maranang, then upadana pacchaya bhavo. In these links, for example, upadana is explained as upadana pacchaya kamma bhavo and kamma bhava pacchaya upapatti bhavo. So actually, normally link comes like this. There is a link that we make normally. Right? This link is not explained in the Paticcasamuppada itself, but normally upadana pacchaya. So in this link, this is still due to upadana, new realities arise, or due to kamma, new realities arise, whatever it is. Both are causing this upatti bhava. So this is a new reality. This is a different realities. Right? So there is no self transmigrating from life to life. So normally either this self passes away or either this self moves, continues in the next life. This is the idea of the others. So Buddha denied this idea by explaining Paticcasamuppada. It's just a causal relationship. Non-self realities exist in generations. That was his idea. Then they took avidya. According to us, avidya causes sankhara. Sankhara causes vijnana. So vijnana arises due to avidya. Sankhara arises due to avidya. So then they suggested is avidya is a different reality and sankhara is a different reality. If this arises due to this avidya, this arises due to this avidya. Avidya is just a hetu, cause. It's not the subject. The subject is kattu. Kattu is the one who does the action. Subject had to be sankhara. Avidya is just supporting. So according to them, sankhara arises by itself. Sankhara has to arise by itself with the help of avidya, but still the doer is sankhara. So they said this cannot happen. This is not possible. Either avidya has to come out of sankhara, that's the one way, then it's not a new arising. If sankhara happens newly, it's arising by itself, then it's not, such a thing cannot happen. So then they said, sabhava lakkanena sunyam. Realities are empty. The conditioned realities, there are no conditioned realities according to them. So they deny the existence of avidya and sankhara, not like Theravadians. Right? So that was the big difference between sabhava sunya and sabhava lakkanena sunya. So in their practice, you have two levels of understanding. First, you should understand there is no self, and then the second level you understand there is no reality. So some Theravada teachers would also mix their teachings and explain. In the end, you have to find that there is nothing, and that falls to Madhyamika teachings. According to Theravadians, sankhara arises, not being before. It's like a virtual reality in science. Virtual reality, according to scientists, now this is a proven fact, that out of nothing, quarks, leptons, electrons, protons do arise in the space and suddenly vanishes. They are still unable to say why this is happening. Maybe it's due to the out of the Higgs field, whatever. Something is suddenly happening and passing away. It's called virtual reality. So Theravadians are advocating such a doctrine. It suddenly happens. But virtual reality happens out of nothing, as far as I know. Maybe it's the Higgs field is responsible for that. Anyway, but the Theravadians, the reality happens, we can say reality happens out of nothing, but it's supported by another reality. So we do say causes are bringing out the reality. Then, when the reality A, B is created by A is supporting B. B arises by itself in the end, but it cannot arise without A. So we don't say the B arises by itself. Why is that? Without A, B would not arise. It shows that B needs the support of A for its arising. So great support is needed. A great support is needed. So therefore, we say B doesn't have its own existence. It's supported by A. It's supported by A. Now B has a certain ability to exist. This ability to exist reduces with the timing. We call the aging, jara. So the ability to exist starts, and in the beginning it increases. It increases to a certain level, and then it starts to decrease. The ability to exist. So from where did this B got this ability to exist? That's we call the Upada Vega. We call. Where did it get it from? it didn't come from A, who is responsible for that? That's A. How do we prove that? At the absence of A, B would not happen. That's the logic of the Theravadians. There's a logic of Theravada. So they advocate, yes, the B can happen by itself. It doesn't mean what the Madhyamika says B happens by itself. Theravadis accept that idea. Even though the Madhyamika says, even though B is supported by A, still B is happening by itself. What they're saying is correct in the end. So what the Theravadians are saying is such a phenomenon can happen. Such a phenomenon can happen. How do you prove it? Because we can observe it. So if something can be observed, a new reality happens which didn't exist before. Out of a certain reality, if something happens and if it can be observed, you don't need to find a logic behind that. That's the Pachakka Dasana Yutti Maggana Natti, according to the Anutika. When something can be seen with direct experience, you don't need to find out the reasons behind it. So according to the Theravadians, reality causes another reality to completely newly happen. Causes another reality to completely arise newly. So that was the difference between Sabhava Sunya and Sabhava Lakkanena Sunya. So we assume that this was the question, but if that is just because of asking the difference between reality and ultimate reality, they are identical. There is no difference in that.
Sadhu. The next question is a little bit out of context, so I'm not sure if maybe you understand the question. But
okay.
So the question is, could Bhante please explain the difference between those two? The first one is cannot be reduced to its components. The other one is reduced to its causes.
Yeah. Is also something that we need to understand very clearly. Now we think about a chair. If you think about something like this chair, we take the chair as a thing. We have to take it as a reality in the beginning. We have to consider it as existing. So chair is a thing, right? So it's made out of wooden parts, right? This is the backrest. So it's made out of wooden parts. So the chair can be reduced into its components. So this is wood part. Wood. Then these wood can also be reduced into particles. These wood particles can be reduced into kalapas, much smaller one. Kalapa can be reduced into 4 great elements and the derived matter. With the combination of this, we get a kalapa. So we have to consider kalapa as existing thing, right? It has a thing. If that thing can be reduced into its components, then we consider that the previously existed thing is not a reality. That is called reducing it to its components. So first, in this reductionist theory, we have to consider the thing that is being reduced as an existing reality. Reality means existing thing. Then we investigate. If we find out that this can be reduced, it's made out of certain ingredients, then that previously assumed reality is not a reality anymore. Right? So in this procedure, we have to consider them as realities. Now this was a reality to us, but as it could be put into components, this becomes not a reality. The wood becomes a reality then. If wood can be reduced into its particles, the reality of the wood disappears. It is not a reality anymore. If these particles can be put into kalapas, they are not realities. Then we get kalapa as realities, but the kalapas also can be put into rupas, then its reality nature is gone. But these great elements, hardness, you cannot say hardness is made out of this. The parts of hardness. What is hardness? Made out of this? We cannot call. These are just qualities. A quality cannot be said to be made out of something. Then we talk about hardness. Right? We take the hardness. hardness comes into existence because of the other three elements. If we may say it in names, it's better. We say Apo, Tejo and Vayu. Due to Apo, due to Tejo and due to Vayu, the hardness appears in the world. If without Apo, without Tejo, we can abstractly talk about hardness. We can abstractly talk about hardness. But that hardness would not come into existence without Apo, Tejo and Vayu. But the idea of hardness can be known with wisdom. The idea of hardness can be known. Idea of chair can be known, but we know only a chair is an idea on how these realities are fixed or gathered in the space. That's called reducing into components. Chair doesn't come into existence because of these parts. Now, Kalapa is how the four great elements and derived elements are existing in a space. We call that thing a Kalapa. It's not that the Kalapa is made out of four great elements in the real sense. In the analysis, we normally say it's made out of Kalapas. But in the actual sense, what exists in the Kalapas or the Rupas in clusters, the Kalapas are in another clusters and they happen to exist in such an area, we get the idea of a podium or a chair. So what exists is the Kalapa themselves. But when we are reducing a reality into its causes, some qualities are responsible for this reality. They are responsible for that reality, but the reality cannot be reduced, cannot be put into any parts. It's not like when the Kalapas are existing, that combination is called a chair. When the Rupas are existing, that combination, how they exist, is called a chair. But hardness is a quality by itself. It's a quality by itself. But it cannot come into existence without some other qualities. Coming into existence is something else. Coming into existence, every reality needs the support of some other realities. So that is called reducing it into causes. Reducing into causes means mentioning their causes. It's not a reduction. It's a good question. Another good question that even though I say it is reduced into causes, it's not the proper wording. It is finding out the causes, not reducing into causes. So the Antarkalapiya Patavi, for example, is due to the bondage and so forth. But when the bondage is happening, what I am saying is a new force arises. That force can be felt. You cannot show its ingredients. If the interkalapa bondage was not there, if the realities were not there, yes. If the kalapas were not there, if the interkalapa, antarkalapi, apo was not there, this force would not have existed. That's true. But it is a quality by itself. It can be known with wisdom. But in the case of a chair, what really exists is the Rupa. You can feel the Rupa. Chair is an idea created in our mind, looking into how they exist. How did we come into that idea? Because it can be reduced into its components. The idea of chair disappears. And when we reverse this, four great elements exist in clusters. Four great elements that exist in clusters remain in other clusters and appears as bigger clusters. The four great elements which exist in smaller clusters and appear in bigger clusters again comes into a much bigger scale and appear as wood. Again, the four great elements which exist in smaller clusters and gathered into bigger clusters and exist in a bigger range appears as a chair. So in the end, what is found, what exists, the Rupa itself. Only Rupa exists. But in this case, hardness has its own intrinsic quality. It can be known with wisdom. It comes into existence because of some other qualities. It doesn't mean that you cannot reduce hardness into, because of these two, the hardness is made out of. These two are responsible. Apo and Tejo are responsible for the hardness to happen. Hardness cannot exist without them. So that is the difference. It's a very subtle difference is there, but it's very important to understand. Reducing a reality into its causes, reducing the realities into its ingredients. That's how I would explain. I don't know whether the idea was conveyed clearly. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The next question is, Bhante, could you please explain this statement? These four great elements can also be used to explain the state of health of a person, for example, too much tejo and so on.
According to the Buddhist teachings, there is a tejo. You can find this in, I shall give you the references when we come to Jivitindriya, the Rupa of Jivitindriya. I shall give you the references. We have something called Pachaka Chedu. A heat element which exists in our stomach. The commentaries and the sub-commentaries say, due to this Pachaka Tejo, our health, our ability to, immunity, or our proneness to sickness, or our healthiness greatly depends upon this heat element which is found in the stomach. Lady Sayadaw suggests, and also some teachers suggest that this Pachaka Tejo, which originates in the stomach, is spread all over the body. It's made out of Kamma. We call Jivita Navaka Kalapa. Jivita Navaka Kalapa. Jivita Navaka Kalapa, even in the Brahmas it is found, in the entire body. In of humans, it starts from the stomach and it spreads all over the body. So according to him, it is something that is spread all over the body, and it is responsible. Its responsibility for the health has been mentioned in the commentaries and sub-commentaries, but it doesn't mention. It mentions is found in the location in the stomach, but it doesn't specifically say that it is spread all over the body. Lady Sayadaw suggests that it is spread all over the body. And he says some teachers say that it's only in the stomach, but he says that it is spread all over the body. Maybe he has taken the references or information from the commentaries, maybe. So this is the tejo. According to the tradition, the heat element. Maybe in the Chinese tradition you call it chi, right? Something called chi. So maybe that's they were talking about. So according to the Buddha, the tejo is responsible for the health. Why is that? Tejo is responsible for the continuation of all the material stuff according to the tradition. If a material body is kept in conducive tejo conditions, it may last for a long period, and the tejo is adverse to the material thing. It may deteriorate quickly and get into destruction. So that same phenomenon is applied to the body. Even the outside, the utu bhojanampi, the outside weather conditions are responsible for the health. The food that we eat, also utuja rupa, 4 great elements in the food are responsible for our health. And the aharaja rupa which produces is responsible for our health. At the same time, there is this energy produces, the heat produced by the karma, which is also greatly responsible for our strength in healthiness. So if that heat is lesser, remember, they cannot bear heat, if I remember. I'm not sure about that. I shall give you clear evidence. I have written it already, but in a future lecture. And if that heat is too much cold, the one person cannot, according to the commentaries or sub-commentaries, the person is unable to bear coldness or something, heat, or I forgot, there's a relationship between them. And the Buddha mentions that, and this heat is responsible for the digestion. It's also responsible, mainly it's responsible for the digestion. But the commentator, sub-commentator says it also affects the entire health system of the body. In the Pancha Padhaniyanga Sutta, Buddha mentions that this heat in the stomach has to be balanced. Should not be too cold, should not be too hot. If it is too hot, you digest quickly. and you get hungry very easily, especially for monks. Then they get hungry at night. If it is too cold, the food would not get digested properly, and you will feel very uncomfortable even at night time. So this clearly affects your meditation practice. And the Buddha says such a person would, even though they progress in meditation, it would be very difficult for them because they will have health issues. And then when it comes to the Marananusati Bhavana, it mentions that imbalance of the four great elements could cause death. Imbalance of four great elements could cause death. So in that perspective, as the body is made out of four great elements, it's obvious that the imbalance would cause that. So in my opinion, the Antarkalapiya Tejo, Antarkalapiya Patavi and all these are playing a huge role in this aspect as well. There is also evidences that says when a certain snake bites you, the entire body becomes stiff and the person dies. It's possible to happen. And with the biting of some snakes, the entire body starts to get rotten. The apo quality increases. So likewise, when the quality, the balance of the four great elements is disrupted, the health issues would occur. And also another explanation is Vayo, Vata. Vata is Vayo. Pitta. Pitta is bile. Semha. These are also made out of four great elements, but different composition, different ratios, mixed in different ratios. Even their imbalance of these would cause the health problems, according to the Ayurveda. And also Buddha has recognized this in the Girimananda Sutta. Pitta Samuttana Abhada, Semma Samuttana Abhada. So there are four great elements in the body. So in the end, as the body is made out of four great elements, it's obvious that any health issue is a problem in the four great elements. And also it says sickness. Now we have four types of rupa created in our body, made in our body. Rupas of four origins. Some rupas are made out of karma, some rupas are made out of utu, some are made out of mind, some are made out of nutriment. So the sickness is mainly, I shall do a separate lesson for that, talking about sickness. There are two ways the sickness can be interpreted. One way of explaining is the painful feeling, kaya viññāna, dukkha sagata kaya viññāna is called the roga, sickness. The next explanation is the rupa of which the equilibrium is broken, disrupted rupa, like the rupas which are distorted because of certain matters, like a cancer and so forth. Both are considered as roga within the tradition. There are two explanations for this. Then in most of the, first in the roga, in the sickness, what is affected is the utuja rupas created by tejo, the abundant amount, the most significant in our body. Then when the equilibrium of these rupas are broken, interrupted, the remaining three types of rupas also get affected. So there is another explanation about roga. So I shall give an explanation on this when we come to that topic. This would be the brief answering for this question.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. The last question is, Bhante, from the Buddhist perspective, if a person is born with disabilities, for example, like with weak limbs, then which is of the four great elements is lacking? And is karma, does karma has a role in this scenario?
Yeah, according to the theory of evolution, this is called random selection, right? Random mutation. So mutation happens in certain cells, DNAs and all, and the person gets the disabilities or qualities that are not matching with the environment. So in the end, with the natural selection who are not fitting the environment conditions, their generations would reduce, and the ones who fit for the environmental conditions, their generations will last. That happens in a random manner, random mutation we call it. According to Buddhism, this mutation, if we take that mutation, because mutation is something that is clearly observed, because how the DNA structure and the cell structure has changed in certain beings. It's something that is a fact. So the mutation happens randomly according to the evolution, but according to Buddhism, mutation can have various causes. One of the most significant is the karma. due to karma, a mutation could happen. And also it may happen for the effects of the karma of a parent can also have a certain degree of effect, and the nature of the womb and the conditions. But in most of the cases, if someone is born disabled, we normally attribute in most of the cases to the karma. So what is happening is karma affects the 4 great elements. It's not the Kammaja Rupas that are distorted. I shall explain about this when we come to the Kammaja Rupas. We first go into explain the Kammaja Rupas, Kammaja Kalapas, Kammaja Santati, 3 aspects of the Rupa. Then then we go into explain about Kamma, Kammaja Rupa, Kammaja Kalapa, Kammaja Santati, and each and every Kammaja Rupa mentioned in the text, and then the effects of karma. Effects of karma means even our Utuja body is affected by karma. Not only our bodies, even the outside world is affected. You can find a lot of information in the doctrine about this. So when we would not say that sometimes the disability can happen, and then it is twofold. The disability can happen as a result of the karma that gave the patisandhi, or the disability can happen by a karma that acts as upapilaka, which disturbs the life produced by patisandhi. So likewise, the karma plays a huge role, and we are unable to say what are the materials which are like, according to the tradition. Now different people have different compositions of the body. They have different elements. The range of the elements are different. It says in the commentary for Vibhanga, when it explains about the Aneka Dhatu, Nana Dhatu Loka in the Dasabala Jnanas, in the Jnana Vibhanga, the commentary says, the 2 chief disciples and the Pacceka Buddhas are able to know what is the ratio, or what is the mixture of 4 great elements. Why certain physical organic bodies, organic means the living bodies, not the trees, organic bodies are differing from each other. What sort of qualities 4 elements are lacking? What sort of 4 elements are abundant or excessive in that body, so which cause the abnormality? Pacceka Buddhas and Agga Savakas are able to know to a certain level. Buddhas is able to know about the entire thing according to them. So therefore, there is a certain amount of lacking or excessiveness of 4 great elements, and in most of the cases, when it happens with birth, Buddhism attributes this to karma, either to the karma which gave the patisandhi, or to a karma that affects our life, which has an upapelika karma. So that's how we explain it. We shall talk this also in detail when we come to the Kammaja Rupa lecture.
Okay, thank you so much for this. Sadhu.
Okay, we can call it a day then. Thank you for listening, and may all of you be able to attain nirvana by this great merit. Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.